it's been incredibly insightful for me growing up, watching her leadership in that role.
The March 2026, the House of Windsor has reached a definitive breaking point. In an unprecedented display of cold, calculated authority that has sent shockwaves through the corridors of power, His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, William, has effectively dismantled the remaining influence of the York family. This morning, Buckingham Palace issued a statement that serves as both an obituary for the status of Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, and a warning to any member of the monarchy who mistakes institutional protection for an infinite shield. The York era, long defined by the shadows of its patriarch Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has been brought to a screeching, humiliating halt. For years, the royal household operated under the lingering leniency of the late Queen Elizabeth II, a grace that often prioritized family cohesion over public accountability. However, as of the 9th of March 2026, that era is dead. Under the stern mentorship of the Princess Royal, Anne, Prince William has officially inaugurated a new order of the monarchy, a structure that demands total transparency, moral fortitude, and an immediate severance of all ties to compromised networks. The primary targets of this swift surgical strike, the two daughters of the now disgraced Andrew. The atmosphere inside the palace is described by insiders as glacial. Prince William, appearing alongside Princess Anne in a rare and unified front, articulated a new rigid code of conduct for all working royals. The message was unmistakable. Those who refuse to submit to the rigorous ethics check protocols, or who fail to open their financial books for independent third-party audits, will no longer be afforded the protection of the crown. The immediate catalyst for this extreme measure, beyond the long-standing toxic legacy of the Epstein affair, is the shocking arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor on the 19th of February 2026. Detained by Thames Valley Police in connection with serious allegations of misconduct in public office. The former prince's legal nightmare has finally reached the doorstep of his own children. As investigators continue to comb through properties in Norfolk and Berkshire, they have uncovered more than just cold evidence. They have unearthed a paper trail that points directly to Beatrice and Eugenie's continued and highly suspicious proximity to the criminal infrastructure of Jeffrey Epstein. New documents released by U.S. authorities this month have eviscerated the narrative of innocent ignorance that the York sisters previously maintained. Investigators now hold evidence suggesting that Beatrice, during her tenure as a UK trade envoy, was not merely performing ceremonial duties, but was actively funneling sensitive intelligence. Sources close to the inquiry allege that she shared updates with Epstein regarding the geopolitical stability and investment landscapes of Vietnam, Singapore, and most alarmingly, the conflict-ridden Helmand province of Afghanistan. William's decision to act was not impulsive. It was the culmination of a months-long internal investigation that revealed a disturbing pattern. The use of royal accounting loopholes to settle the multi-million-pound civil litigation for Andrew in 2022. This discovery has turned the tide of public opinion and internal royal policy, validating earlier accusations that the institution had been fixing problems behind the scenes. The crown is not a sanctuary for those who prioritize blood ties over the law, a source close to the Prince of Wales stated. As the sun rose over London on this March 10th, the reality for Beatrice and Eugenie is stark. They are no longer protected. They are no longer part of the public image of the monarchy. They are, in the eyes of the new guard, a liability that has finally been purged. As we look toward the following parts of this unfolding crisis, we will explore the disintegration of the York sisters' professional lives, the systematic replacement of their roles by the likes of the Princess of Wales and Lady Louise, and the deeper, darker connections to shell companies that have finally forced William's hand. The purge has begun, and no one, not even the blood of the king, is safe. The decision issued on the 9th of March 2026 and solidified this morning, March 10th, marks a seismic shift in the structural integrity of the House of Windsor. For years, the York sisters, Beatrice and Eugenie, existed in a strange limbo, technically non-working royals by the conventional definition, yet beneficiaries of prestige, honorary military roles, and the immense soft power that comes with the crown's proximity. That era of ambiguity has been terminated with a surgical precision that bears the unmistakable hallmark of Prince William's uncompromising vision for the monarchy's future. In a move that has sent tremors through the British establishment, the palace has officially stripped Beatrice and Eugenie of all remaining military affiliations, honorary patronages, and, perhaps most devastatingly, their official royal styles. They are no longer to be referred to in any official capacity, with the titles that once served as a shield against public scrutiny. The directive is absolute. The York brand, once a staple of royal charitable endeavors and high society galas, is to be treated as a toxic asset. The rationale behind this move is as much about logistics as it is about morality. The backlog of charitable commitments, environmental summits, and diplomatic engagements previously helmed by the York sisters has been identified by the Prince of Wales as a reputational minefield. Under the new framework established by William with the tactical oversight of Princess Anne, these activities cannot be left in a vacuum. The vacuum, however, is not being filled by surrogates. It is being seized by the Order of Stability. Starting today, the responsibility for these critical engagements has been redistributed with a clear strategic objective. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, whose public approval ratings remain the gold standard for the monarchy, has been placed at the center of this transition. Alongside the Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie, the rising presence of Lady Louise Windsor, and the logistical support provided by the Earl of Wessex, James, this new cadre, is being positioned as the absolute representation of the Crown's future. The transition is not merely a reshuffling of calendars. It is a profound signal to the corporate world and the global diplomatic community. Major entities that previously held partnerships with Beatrice and Eugenie, including telecommunications giant BT and the banking conglomerate Barclays, have been contacted directly by the palace's new transparency office. The instruction was clear: terminate all legacy contracts associated with the former York princesses immediately. The goal is to sanitize the royal portfolio of any lingering links to the Epstein-related fallout that has plagued Andrew Mountbatten Windsor for over a decade. This process of clinical extraction has already begun to bear fruit. Prestigious universities and international philanthropic organizations, fearing the Epstein stain by association, have been proactive in severing their ties. The palace is actively facilitating these separations to ensure that the fallout does not contaminate the new streamlined royal structure. The symbolism of this replacement is deliberate. While the sisters are being systematically erased from the official ledger, Catherine's return to the forefront, most notably her expected re-emergence at Royal Ascot, is being staged as an image of total recovery. It is a visual narrative designed to demonstrate that the institution is not just surviving the York crisis, but is actively thriving by casting off its dead weight. For the sisters, the situation is no longer about negotiation. It is about containment. Their removal from the official calendar of the royal family is complete. They have been cast into the periphery, their movements monitored, and their previous privileges treated as a debt now being called in. The Prince of Wales is not merely conducting a cleanup, he is redefining what it means to serve the crown. For Beatrice and Eugenie, the transition from being insiders to being considered risks to the institution is a fall from grace that will likely be studied for generations. As the moment the modern British monarchy decided its survival was more important than its bloodlines. As the palace moves to secure the financial and reputational perimeter, the focus now shifts toward the internal secrets of the York household, specifically the shell companies and the mysterious offshore investments that William and Anne are currently deconstructing. The extraction of the people was merely the first phase. The investigation into their finances is where the real storm is gathering. As the dust settles on the immediate political fallout of the York family's expulsion, the focus of the palace's new transparency apparatus has shifted from titles and appearances to the far more dangerous terrain of ledgers, offshore shell companies, and opaque investment webs. For Prince William and Princess Anne, the ethics check protocol initiated on the 9th of March 2026 was never intended to be a mere administrative hurdle. It was a trap. By refusing to open their books for independent third-party audits, Beatrice and Eugenie did not just demonstrate defiance. They inadvertently provided the smoking gun that confirmed years of whispered allegations regarding the family's financial insulation. The investigation led by the palace's forensic auditors has revealed a complex web of financial maneuvers designed to distance the Yorks from their sources of income, yet keep them intimately connected to the Epstein-linked financial ecosystem. These shell companies, often registered in jurisdictions with minimal regulatory oversight, were not merely vehicles for wealth preservation. Investigators suspect they acted as conduits for the movement of assets that, under intense scrutiny, could be traced back to the same disgraced financier who once held Andrew Mountbatten Windsor in his orbit. Williams investigators discovered that the multi-million-pound settlement paid to Virginia Giuffre in 2022, a sum that shocked the public and raised immediate questions about its origin, was not, as previously claimed, a personal sacrifice from the late Queen's private estate. Instead, the forensic trail suggests a portion of the funds originated from a series of advisory fees and consulting contracts funneled through accounts linked to companies where Beatrice and Eugenie held silent equity. This revelation has been the final nail in the coffin of the palace's internal patience. The Prince of Wales has been blunt in his internal briefings. The Crown cannot claim to uphold the rule of law while harboring members who utilize the royal seal of approval to secure high-interest loans and opaque investment vehicles that would otherwise be rejected by reputable financial 17 institutions. The irony of the situation is not lost on the public. While Beatrice and Eugenie preached philanthropy and modern values, their private financial infrastructure was, in the words of a senior palace advisor, functionally indistinguishable from the high-risk, high-controversy models associated with their father's infamous associates. The ethics check was the definitive test of loyalty and innocence. When the sisters rejected the demand for full, unrestricted transparency, they effectively chose to protect their financial anonymity over their status within the royal family. This choice, according to Princess Anne, was an admission of guilt by omission. By maintaining their connection to these questionable networks, they allowed the Epstein stain to remain a permanent fixture on their public record. They didn't just fail the check, they chose to flee from it. Furthermore, the scale of this financial exposure is staggering. We are looking at a period spanning from 2018 to the present day, involving hundreds of millions of pounds in transaction volumes passing through entities that appear to have no tangible business output. These companies, many of which are now being identified as paper-only entities, provided the illusion of professional success for the Yorks while serving as a smoke-ocasey screen for capital movement. The British tax authorities and independent auditors are now working in concert with the palace to determine if these activities skirted the edge of legal compliance or breached the integrity of the British financial system entirely. For Beatrice and Eugenie, the strategy of quiet containment has failed. They believe that by keeping their heads down and avoiding direct commentary on their father's legal woes, they could weather the storm. They failed to realize that in the new Windsor era, silence is no longer considered a neutral position. It is considered complicity. Every day they remained tethered to these financial networks was another day they were actively working against the interests of the Crown. The decision to cut them off was not just a punitive measure. It was a protective one. The monarchy could not afford to be the last most prominent institution clinging to the wreckage of the York financial disaster. As we move to the next phase of this report, we will look at how this financial isolation has manifested in their personal lives, specifically the fracture of their domestic stability and the unraveling of their private lives under the relentless glare of a public that no longer sees them as royals, but as figures of intense, justified suspicion. For princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, the professional purge from the palace was merely the first phase of an agonizing unraveling. Behind the high-security gates of their private residences, the life they once curated as members of the inner circle has effectively collapsed under the weight of unrelenting public scrutiny and the cold, detached gaze of their own family. The narrative of keeping the family together has been replaced by a ruthless reality. The York sisters have become paras in their own home. Their personal lives now mirrors of the institutional disgrace that has consumed them. The most visible sign of this domestic fracture centers on Princess Eugenie and her husband Jack Brooksbank. Once portrayed as a modern, relatable couple balancing royal duties with private entrepreneurship, their marriage is now the subject of intense speculation. Observers noted a chilling departure from protocol during the recent birthday celebrations for King Charles III. Eugenie arrived alone, a solitary figure amidst the pomp and pageantry, signaling a departure from the traditional image of a unified royal unit. Her husband Jack was conspicuously absent, fueling reports that the stress of the Epstein stain and the relentless media harassment has pushed their relationship to a breaking point. Sources within the royal household intimate that the marriage has been under immense strain since the 2026 inquiry intensified. The pressure is twofold: the public's demand for accountability and the internal directive from Prince William that any spouse associated with the York network must also submit to the intrusive, rigorous financial auditing of the ethics check for Jack Brooksbank, whose business interests have been frequently questioned for their lack of transparency. The demand to open his personal ledgers to the palace's forensic team was a hurdle he could not or would not clear. This growing isolation is further compounded by the couple's prolonged residency in Portugal. What was once framed as a lifestyle choice or a desire for privacy is now viewed by the public and palace insiders alike as a tactical retreat, a form of self-imposed exile designed to escape the immediate heat of the British press. However, the move has backfired. Instead of granting them anonymity, the distance has created a vacuum that has been filled by speculation. Digital investigators and anonymous watchdog accounts, such as the widely followed Exposing Royals network, have been relentless. Their messaging is cryptic yet devastating, recently posting teasers about an imminent dissolution of the York partnership, a phrase that has haunted Eugenie in every tabloid headline. The emotional toll is visible. Eugenie, who once sought to maintain a public profile of loyalty to her father Andrew, now finds herself in a cruel catch-22. Her continued public defense of a man at the center of a criminal investigation has alienated her from the very institution that once shielded her. She is forced to choose between the toxic loyalty of blood and the survival of her own future. It is a choice that has left her politically stranded. Her sister Beatrice has fared little better. Her attempts to project an image of a serious businesswoman have been systematically dismantled by the revelations of her past correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, painting her as a willing participant in the very world that the rest of the world has spent a decade trying to condemn. The sisters are now essentially marooned. They have been removed from the Royal Ascot guest list, a social death sentence in the hierarchy of the British aristocracy, and have been scrubbed from the official royal diary. They are no longer invited to the quiet family gatherings at Sandringham or Balmoral where the future of the monarchy is debated. They are in the eyes of the new guard legacy risks. The psychological weight of this transition cannot be overstated. From the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace to the isolated silence of a residence in Portugal, the journey of the York sisters has been one of contraction. They have gone from being symbols of royal privilege to symbols of royal liability. The York brand has become synonymous with secrecy, questionable financial ties, and an inability to adapt to the moral requirements of the 21st century monarchy. As the investigation into their finances deepens and the threat of legal action looms, their personal lives are no longer theirs to control. They are trapped in a narrative written by the Prince of Wales, a narrative that has no room for the ghosts of the past. The isolation is total, and for the first time in their lives, there is no one left at the palace to answer their calls. As the York sisters are systematically relegated to the margins of royal history, the House of Windsor is undergoing a profound and visible metamorphosis. The vacuum created by the removal of Beatrice and Eugenie is not being left unfilled. It is being occupied by the Order of Stability, a curated cohort designed to project an image of impeccable integrity, professional rigor, and unwavering commitment to the crown's future. Led by the Princess of Wales, Catherine, this transition is the centerpiece of Prince William's vision for a monarchy that is not only fit for purpose, but essentially invulnerable to the scandals of the past. The strategic elevation of Catherine is deliberate. Her return to the forefront of the royal calendar, specifically her anticipated appearance at the upcoming Royal Ascot, is being choreographed to serve as the definitive antithesis to the York era. Where the Yorks represented opacity, familial entitlement, and the lingering threat of the Epstein stain, Catherine represents the recovery of the institution's moral authority. Her presence is a visual promise to the British public. The monarchy has been cleansed of its most toxic elements and is now firmly back in the hands of those who prioritize institutional health over personal privilege. The new structure is built upon a foundation of shared responsibility and absolute loyalty to the ethics check standards. Joining Catherine in this revitalized front is the Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie, whose quiet competence and years of discreet service have positioned her as one of the most reliable pillars of the new monarchy. Alongside them, the inclusion of Lady Louise Windsor and the Earl of Wessex, James, serves to signal the arrival of a younger generation that is being trained to operate within a framework of total transparency. This is a deliberate generational reboot aimed at ensuring that the errors of the past, specifically the tendency to treat royal status as an inheritance of unaccountability, are not repeated by the future custodians of the crown. The Princess Royal Anne remains the architect of this purification. Her role cannot be overstated. She has been the iron-willed enforcer of the new code, ensuring that the transition from the old guard to the new order occurs without hesitation or compromise. Anne has made it clear in her internal directives that the monarchy is currently engaged in a total purification process, one that extends far beyond the immediate household of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. She has publicly and privately stated that the institution will no longer shy away from the pain of confrontation. "We are not here to facilitate private interests," she noted in a recent private briefing. "We are here to safeguard the legitimacy of the crown, and that requires the courage to excise whatever is no longer healthy." This approach represents a radical departure from the mid-century model of never complain, never explain. Instead, the new monarchy is opting for transparency as a weapon. By being the ones to proactively investigate, identify, and remove compromised individuals, William and Anne are reclaiming the narrative of the monarchy. They are no longer the victims of media leaks or public outcry. They are the proactive curators of their own reputation. When a member of the family like the York sisters fails to meet the standards, the palace acts first. This preemptive strike capability is what separates the current revitalized Windsor operation from the crumbling facade of the previous decade. The public response to this shift has been largely one of relief. For years, the British taxpayer has watched as the institution appeared to be held hostage by the antics and associations of the York branch. The sight of Catherine Sophie and the younger royals stepping into these vacated roles acts as a powerful restorative. It signals that the royal brand is being protected, modernized, and insulated from the risks that once threatened to tear it apart. As we approach the final section of this report, we will synthesize the broader historical implications of this purge. We will examine why this is not merely a temporary crisis management strategy, but a permanent recalibration of the British monarchy's relationship with accountability, wealth, and its own survival in a world that is increasingly intolerant of the privileges of the past. The events of March 9 and 10, 2026 will be etched into the constitutional history of the United Kingdom, not merely as a family dispute, but as the moment the House of Windsor fundamentally renegotiated its social contract with the British people. By executing a clean, uncompromising rupture with the York branch, Prince William and Princess Anne have signaled the end of the age of privilege and the dawn of a new order defined by institutional survival through radical transparency. This is no longer a monarchy that hides behind the veil of archaic tradition. It is a monarchy that recognizes its survival depends on its ability to evolve, shed its toxic elements, and demonstrate its relevance in an era that demands absolute accountability. The Purge of Beatrice and Eugenie is the final act in a long, painful tragedy that began with the initial disastrous associations between Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. For decades, the palace relied on a strategy of deflection and controlled silence, hoping that the prestige of the crown would be sufficient to mask the cracks in its moral foundation. That strategy has been soundly defeated by the relentless glare of 21st-century digital scrutiny, the public demand for ethical parity, and a generational shift within the family itself. The new order is built on the realization that institutional silence is not stability. It is, in fact, the greatest threat to institutional longevity. As the palace pivots toward this future, the symbolism of the new order is stark. The emergence of the Princess of Wales, Catherine, as the face of royal stability, is not merely a strategic choice for public relations. It is a manifestation of the monarchy's intent to link its future to those who embody the values of duty, discipline, and modern public service. The role of Lady Louise Windsor and the Earl of Wessex, James, further reinforces this commitment, suggesting a future where members of the royal family are defined by their contributions rather than their titles. This is a monarchy that is actively curating its own successor generation to ensure that the mistakes of the past, specifically the insularity and arrogance that defined the York era, are systematically eliminated. Furthermore, the broader historical implications of this purification process are significant. The decision to implement the ethics check and to insist upon external financial audits for all working royals represents an unprecedented concession to the democratic principle of transparency. It indicates that the crown is willing to sacrifice its own bloodlines to protect its legitimacy. This is a clear signal to the Commonwealth, to the British Parliament, and to the global public. The institution is not above the law, and its members are not exempt from the standards of behavior expected of any other public figure in a democratic society. As we look toward the remainder of 2026, the question is no longer whether the monarchy will survive, but what form it will take in the decades to follow. The York crisis has served as a crucible, forging a more disciplined, more transparent, and arguably more resilient institution. Under the leadership of William and Anne, the House of Windsor is effectively shedding the protective shell of the 20th century and embracing the harsh, unforgiving light of the 21st. the Epstein stain will remain a footnote in the history of the monarchy, but it will be remembered as the impetus that forced the institution to choose between its past ghosts and its future survival. The royal horizon is no longer clouded by the uncertainty of private scandals. Instead, it is focused on a future that is, for the first time in recent memory, clearly defined by a commitment to integrity. The Crown has demonstrated that it is willing to perform the necessary surgery to remain the bedrock of British identity. While the personal costs have been immense, severing families, ending royal careers, and exposing the deep fractures within the House of York, the institutional cost of inaction would have been fatal. The purge is complete. The new order has begun, and for the British monarchy, the path forward is finally,